Joining us now is Okpe with stories trending around the world. Hello, Oji.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm doing well. Good morning, the lady in red.
Good morning,
Miss Ifeni will always call you that, right? How are you?
Fine, Megan. I love your new look.
My new look? Oh,
Your trademark look.
You got it right.
Yeah?
You're doing well.
Oji Nika with the hair.
Good morning, Rufai. How are you?
Oji, you are looking very smart.
Thank you very much. You too.
I like it.
Thank you.
You are back to your trademark.
Thank you, Rufai.
You are beautiful, normal self.
Oh, goodness. This is international television.
Oh, no, that's not, that doesn't mean to be sexist. I'm sorry about that.
Just joking. I'm just joking.
Oji is equally very intelligent.
I'm just joking. Thank you. Well, good morning to you, viewers. We begin What's Trending with reactions to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika's announcement that international flights will resume operations beginning August 29th, 2020. The minister shared the news via Twitter, adding that the flights will resume from Lagos and Abuja airports, just like the domestic flights, and that protocols and procedures will be announced in due course. While some social media users who had been affected by the flight closure were elated by the news, others had mixed reactions. Let's take some tweets. One user, Ade Yusuf, wrote, this is a tweet I love, "My wife has been locked down in Nigeria since April. She came home from the funeral of her father in March and was scheduled to leave mid-April. I left a week before the lockdown back to our base, so I haven't seen my wife since April." Hashtag thankful for this news. I mean, we got a lot of this response for Hadi's tweet, but we also had other users who were concerned about the political implication. Another user, Henry, wrote, "Well, I'm sure the political elite are very glad to see flights resume. Is it a coincidence that schools abroad are reopening in September? And this paves the way for their wards to return while the kids of common man still doesn't know when their schools and universities are opening." All right, I know that you guys talked about this earlier. It's still a huge debate whether or not it's a good idea. But I mean, I think around the world we're seeing that things are opening. There's all the precautions with COVID-19. I'm particularly excited about this news. I don't know about you.
Are you traveling anytime soon?
I'm just saying.
Fingers crossed.
I haven't been home. I mean, America in a while, so I am excited. I would love to go home and see.
And I can understand that feeling, and a lot of people are like that. I have friends who just came quickly to Nigeria, but the airports were closed and all of that. But like I said, I'm a bit skeptical as to the plans and protocols we are going to put in place to ensure that we do not, see those numbers increase as a result of imported cases. Yes, there's, of course, you need to provide your COVID-19 test results.
There have been a lot of things that have been put in place.
But is that enough? We're seeing countries putting fines in place for those who, flout their mandatory quarantine, 14 days quarantine. Are we going to see that in Nigeria? Would there be fines imposed? How strict will those measures be? There's so many questions, but hey, I mean, we don't know when COVID-19 will go, so we cannot be closed forever. But we need to take these precautions.
Yes, I mean, like my first Twitter user, there are a lot of things that have happened that have really affected a lot of families with this flight closure. And I think that, a lot of people are happy really because of that.
Well, definitely there are many dimensions to it. At the personal level, there are persons who have been separated from their families. Dislocated more or less. There are many Nigerians who are still stranded in many parts of the world, for whom this will be good news and would want to return home or go back to their destinations. But as we've pointed out, there are international protocols in place. We hope that those protocols will be strictly enforced.
Yes.
Look at the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a clear list of countries that if you go there, you come back into the UK, you will be quarantined for 14 days. At a point, France was not on the list of destinations from which you will be required to be quarantined. But you see that the UK was monitoring the situation in different parts of the world. The moment there was a fresh spike in cases of infection in France, the UK immediately announced that anybody coming in from France will be quarantined. So that vigilance is the kind of thing we would like to see. And the minister should come up with more specific details so that we can interrogate those details. It's not a thing that here and a few persons will just make up their mind about. No, this is something that concerns all of us. And when they make those details available, it will be part of our responsibility to interrogate those details. Those details will include, for example, is it an open border thing that we're going to have at the 2 international airports that have been mentioned, or there will be specific countries. Maybe we'll just say, okay, we can open the international route to France or not, to the UK or 1 or 2 other countries in Africa, and then we keep it at the minimum. Now, at the business level, there has been some excitement. Some people have been saying, well, the airlines have not been making enough money and all that. But I think that the aviation sector would probably be one of those sectors that will have a very long, protracted, period of recovery.
Yes.
Because what we have seen in Asia, in Europe, and even in North America is that many of those airlines that have returned, they are not even, with the resumption of international flights, getting up to 50% of their pre-COVID passenger rate. So what does that mean? What it means, of course, is that we still have to look at how measures can be put in place to see how the aviation sector can recover. Unfortunately, 4 flights, they've said, to Nigeria, to Lagos Airport daily, and then 4 flights to Abuja daily. But if you look at many of these airlines that will be going back and forth, they are not necessarily Nigerian airlines, and we have bilateral air travel service agreements with different parts of the world. But, we're just a destination supporting other people's businesses. We don't have indigenous airlines that have the capacity to compete. So these are some of the, underlying issues that are involved. But, of course, parents will be happy that their children will be able to go back to school if the UK happens to be on the list, or some other countries where you have Nigerian children going to school. And they're romantics, like Ade Yusufu. I hope when his wife eventually arrives, he will take a picture and share it with us on Twitter. Because he sounded so romantic.
Yes, it wasn't just him. Some are even saying, oh, thank God this comes at the right time. My wife just had a baby. I'm so excited. Thank you, Minister. Rufai, I'd love your take on this story. Are you excited?
I'm excited. I mean, Ade Yusufu misses his baby. His baby. And that's obvious. And we'd like to see the picture of their reunion anyway. I mean, I've got some points. Number one for me will be particularly about the protocols. And I want us to interrogate the protocols even more. How's it going to be like? People coming back to this country or coming into the country, are they going to be screened? How are they going to be screened? What are the effective methods of screening we have for them? Let's not forget, a lot of the cases we got from COVID-19 started pouring in that threshold where we're clamoring for a lockdown of the airports and the airports were not locked down. So please, is it only the COVID certificate we are going to ask for? Are we also going to ask for travel history of places they have been? So these are the questions we should ask, and that's why I call for cautious optimism in all of this. A part of me is excited, but a part of me is also saying, is this not going to be a surge? Let's not forget, after the Index Italian case came in, we had about 3 cases. There was a window up till March where we were saying, lock the airports, and the airports remained opened, and there was a surge in cases. It just looked as though a lot of people coming in through that time, after the Index case was discovered, they just brought COVID into Nigeria, full on.
Yes, well, you're right.
Yes,
I am sure in the coming days, the minister and everyone involved will come up with a list of protocols.
I know we need to move to the next story, but that's just part of my fear.
Yes, I know. Yeah, but, in any ways, I think a majority of people are elated. There's one video that has been trending on social media, and that video shows a plane dancing. Let's take a quick look at that video before we take our next story. I must have played that video like 100 times. That is just me excited about the flight. Well, let's take another story in Nigeria.
Barcelona. How? Barcelona, you know.
No, I think it's just a
disappointing performance.
Let's not go into the football now.
Can we take our next story real quick?
You know, well, it goes to show how excited even the planes would be that have been grounded for so long.
That was my dance when yes, you're right, the planes will be. Well, we'll take another story in Nigeria. The governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, in an interview on Monday, said some southern leaders in the state demand for money in order for peace to reign. During the interview, the governor said his administration won't appease troublemakers, adding that previous administrations used to pay the southern leaders who allegedly organized the killings in the state. The southern part of Kaduna has experienced the worst form of violence in recent times, with hundreds of residents murdered by bandits. Amid the security challenges, some stakeholders have accused the governor of not doing enough and also taking sides in the situation. Let's take some Twitter reactions to this conversation. One user Roy wrote, Southern Kaduna people are being mercilessly killed by the Fulanis, and the governor wants us to believe that the leaders want money for peace to reign. That sounds rather unbelievable. Another user, Achima, wrote, I find it hard to believe El-Rufai. He could just name those who ask for money at the expense of their people's lives. Making such blanket statements is very unhelpful and breeds mistrust. Southern Kaduna needs peace. Kaduna needs peace. We all deserve it. Adesua.
Yes, not to defend the governor here, but I did watch that interview,
Yes.
and it wasn't so much of a blanket statement. He said that the security agencies and his administration were marking the people, and that they were gathering evidence, and once they have enough, then they can press charges, and that he didn't want to jump the gun. He didn't want to make, name names when the investigations were still ongoing. That was what he said. But, the people have the right to feel anger. These killings are, just too many. I mean, one life is a loss. And then when you hear the numbers coming out of Southern Kaduna, but again, we must remember that this is a long challenge. It's a long security issue in Kaduna State. And the governor also said we pay so much attention to Southern Kaduna, but that there are people dying in other senatorial districts of the state. And he, attributes this to ethno-religious crisis. He also said there's a bit of land grabbing and then, of course, banditry. But, again, you are elected as the governor to, one, secure lives and property. So it will seem like lamentation by the governor, but the people expect you to solve the problems and not lament.
I think that last bit was quite unnecessary for him to have said that.
Well, it's very easy, perhaps convenient, when public officials grant interviews for the sensational part of the interview, to be the one that the public will focus on, particularly on social media. But I think that with regard to the serious crisis in Southern Kaduna, we should focus on the big issue. We have said on this program that the crisis in Southern Kaduna is perennial. It's been there. It's age-long. As far back as 1948, the Qatars were quarreling with the Emirate people who wanted to collect tax. So it's not as if it's a new thing. What is important is how do you address it? Yes, the governor may say that some people are making money from the crisis or expecting money from the crisis. Even in the fight against Boko Haram, don't people make allegations that, the fight against Boko Haram has become a money-making racket for some people? But the issue is, let's focus on peace building, on conflict resolution. And I think that the governor himself addressed that big issue at length yesterday when he met with a delegation from the Christian Association of Nigeria, led by its president, Samson Ayokunle. The Khan, expressing concern about Southern Kaduna, had placed about 11 recommendations before the governor. And in his response, he gave every assurance that his government is committed to ensuring peace. We hope that he will take concrete steps in that direction that will not encourage people to doubt his own intentions or whether or not he has a partisan interest on the crisis either in Southern Kaduna or in the northern part of Kaduna. One point that came out of that meeting with the Khan delegation is that, look, apart from security measures being taken, that the people of Southern Kaduna, and I'm quoting the governor himself, must agree to live together. Because if you look at those communities in Southern Kaduna, all those local governments, they are mixed. There's an ethnic mix, there is a religious mix, and many of these people have been there. You see that the ones that are Hausa Fulanis, they will tell you that, look, they also belong here. Okay? But the others that are probably Christians, they also say we all belong here. So it is to assist these people to achieve both vertical integration, horizontal integration, as they call it in peace conflict studies, so that all of them can live together in harmony. And for political leaders to avoid statements that can further inflame passions or show that they have a partisan interest in the matter.
Yeah, that was the point I was making earlier. I didn't think that it was necessary for him to inflict that type of sentiment at this point, especially with killings around the northern part as well. Rufai, what's your take on this?
I mean, can we move on to the next story because of time?
No, go ahead. You have time.
Are you sure?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. This has been on for quite a while. This has been on since the 40s, even earlier than that. And because of the mix of Kaduna itself, a lot of Christian population, a lot of Muslim population, definitely will have this back and forth. But I'm more concerned about the will to be able to bring this to an end. And I know it can be brought to an end. And I will segue it into what used to happen in Shagamu many years ago. Shagamu too had that feeling. In fact, we had a crisis in 1998 in Shagamu. But after that crisis, an effort at making peace was instituted. I have never had any crisis again in Shagamu. Hausas and Yorubas live together in peace and harmony in Shagamu. I want to see the same in Southern Kaduna, because the Shagamu crisis of 98-99 was so much that some Hausas were relocating back to the north. But after the peaceful resolution of that crisis, we did not hear anything about the conflict. So I think it still goes back to the will. And please, we'd like to beg Governor El-Rufai, you are in charge of the state. The buck stops with you. We know you can do it. Please bring a lasting solution to this. I know the crisis might have lasted long, just like if Modake crisis had lasted quite a while before it was resolved. Just like the Ijoa and Shakiri crisis. So please have the will to bring this down as much as possible. I know it's a complex case, ethno-religious crisis, the ethnicity on one part, religion on the other part, but I know it can be brought to bear. Let us use Shagamu as a poster child. Let us use Ife and Modakeke as a poster child.
Very good point, Rufai. Very good point. Let's take another story. Nigerian pastor David Oyedepo was trending on social media over a sermon delivered on Sunday, where he advised the federal government to expunge the part of the newly signed amended Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 that gives a supervising minister the power to remove the board of trustees of churches without recourse to the court. While delivering the sermon, the pastor said whoever amended that part of the bill must be someone who woke up from the wrong side of the bed after dreaming. Let's take a listen.
The government has no right to determine worship time. I saw something nasty. They call it karma. The full meaning is what? Company and Allied Matters Act. And they boggled religious bodies into it.
And you.
The same thing they did 2 years ago when I shouted on the devil. The same words were used. That one registrar general can decide to close the account of a church. And then some fellows under any scheming will want to stifle the church.
Never.
And then one man will remove the trustee of a church. How dare you and put a manager there? When did you become that dictator?
Oh, yeah. Is that possible?
When Jesus called me, were you there?
No.
I'm asking for those involved in those schemes, exercise caution. That should stop now. You want to know the strength of a man, molest his wife. We are the bride of Christ. Anyone that touches his bride touches the apple of his eye.
Rufai, I I am with Pastor Oyedepo on this story. What about you?
I'm sorry, I'm not with Pastor Oyedepo on this story. And I say that very bluntly. And
Yes.
these are my points. Number one, to start with, churches get charitable donations. And if they get charitable donations, there should be some level of regulation to it. And you should have some level of regulation like it applies with charities. It's just fair understanding. Because in turn, a lot of Christians might not believe me on this. Churches build universities, they own institutions, they don't pay taxes on this. And there should be some level of regulation to this. I remember 2 years ago, he was talking about, I think it was a committee chaired by Kingsley Obaza. Kingsley Obaza was finally removed from office that time. And this was the same argument. If you see the way it's done in other parts of the world, churches in London, for instance, get tax, I think you get tax rebates on tithe paid to churches because it's like a charitable donation. And in this case, they get all the money, it's fine. They say they have charitable things they do, it's fine. But there should be a sense of accountability. Even the Bible talks about, if you think this is Caesar's, give unto Caesar what is Caesar. And let's be realistic. Nobody is trying to guard the church or regulate them. But if you get charitable donations, there must be some level of full disclosure as enshrined in the Company and Allied Matters Act. So if he's talking about changing it, I don't know how this will. Maybe when it's up for review, they can push the case. But I'm totally against what he said there. Nobody's trying to gag the church in this regard. Well, nobody's trying to gag the church, honestly.
Is it regulation when the CAC can appoint a board of trustees for you? There's a difference between regulation and control, and I think that's what the argument is here. We had Ozofu Ogemudia, who was part of the technical advisories for the drafters of this, KAMA 2020. I know she admitted to a certain extent to say perhaps we should be looking at a separate Charities Act like is done elsewhere in the world, and not lump up, non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, and the religious houses, because the mischief is that these NGOs receive funds that they do not account for. So I think that there's a difference between regulation and control.
Well, I think this should be properly put in context. The Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 was signed by the President on August 7, repealing KAMA 1990, so 30 years after. And a lot of people hailed it as a major achievement in terms of the efforts of the administration to further promote the ease of doing business. However, since that act was signed into law, there have been concerns by persons who claim that there are anti-democratic clauses in that particular law as it is. And one of the areas is what Pastor Oyedepo and others are, complaining about. The particular portion of that law that is complaining about is Section 839. In Section 839, the supervising minister and the registrar of the CAC, are both given the powers to register churches and NGOs, or if you like, not-for-profit organizations. And also in public interest. That section talks about public interest. That where the registrar general or the minister sees that it needs to act in public interest, he can intervene and, suspend the board of trustees and appoint new trustees. Okay? Now, that's what Pastor Oyedepo is complaining about, that this is unacceptable. You cannot take over the church. Then another section that is complaining about, Section 704, where a particular body is written into the law, which is a public company limited by a private company limited by guarantee, which is said to be owned by someone who was, a gubernatorial candidate, aspirant in Osun State, in the last gubernatorial election in that state. And people have queried it that this does not make sense. You can't say that, BRIPAN should take over a particular section of a law. And that BRIPAN is a privately owned company, and then you are using a law to help create funds for another group. There's also another section of the law which says every foreign company should be registered. Section 78, 79, and 80 of KAMA, except Chinese companies. And people are also kicking from that direction to say you can't exempt Chinese companies. For what reason? You are making a law in Nigeria to defend the interests of a particular foreign entity. And then if you have any issues with KAMA under any of the provisions, you must give KAMA 21 days notice that you want to go to court. And you are expected to take permission from KAMA before you can even defend your own interests. So people say this is dictatorial. This does not make sense at all. So these are some of the complaints about the law, but they are just about 4 or 5 clauses. But Pastor Oyedepo has talked about one of them.
And
but
I think that one clause
people should push for a review of those contentious sections so that you don't use a law to turn the Registrar General of Kama, of CAC into a dictator.
Yes, exactly. That is my point on that story. And
very quickly, I don't want to go to the last story, but did you say this service was last Sunday? Because I didn't see anybody with a face mask. And another thing,
it's always with the social distancing.
I didn't.
No social
distancing. And then I was going to just go ahead with the last story.
No, please go ahead. You're fine.
No, I was going to say, with the Kama and the registration, I think I lost my thought there. Just go on last story.
But don't forget that Pastor Oyedepo had, complained about churches not being reopened.
Yes.
And about, COVID-19 being something that has been thrown out of proportion by agents of the devil. So don't be surprised that there was no social distancing and nobody wore masks.
And that's always the conversation everyone's trying to have.
Most importantly for me in this country, I think we should have something at which, we check what's going on.
Anyway, we've got to go now. Thank you very much, Oji.
I'm looking forward to the last story.
Yeah, well, you wanted to talk now.
Don't worry, she will take it tomorrow.
Yes,
well, let's
tomorrow.
See. We'll see.
Thank you, Oji.